This video will focus on the Materials Use and Transportation section of the SEFA Input Worksheet. This section is used to document the types and amounts of materials used and associated materials transportation to the site. This information is used to estimate the energy use and air emissions associated with off-site manufacturing of materials and to estimate the fuel usage associated with materials transport so that this can also be incorporated into energy use, greenhouse gas emissions, and air emissions in your final environmental footprint summary. Consistent with the color coding throughout the SEFA workbooks, you will populate information in the yellow cells and select from the drop-down menus in the red cells. The blue cells will be automatically calculated for you. Columns F through H are associated with materials manufacture and use, while columns I through R are associated with materials transport. If you do not wish to incorporate materials manufacture or transportation into your footprint summary, then you should leave the associated columns blank. When selecting a material type to enter in this section, you must select from the drop-down menu. SEFA includes options for several commonly used construction and treatment materials. Because these options are already included in SEFA, the necessary conversion factors are already built into the workbooks. If you do not see the material you want to record, you can enter it as a user-defined material on the User-Defined Factors worksheet. But note that you will also need to enter estimated conversion factors for energy, greenhouse gases, and air emissions associated with the manufacture of each unit of your user-defined material. When you populate a user-defined material, it will appear in the drop-down menu near the bottom of the options. Once you've selected a material, you'll need to enter the amount of material used or transported and the unit indicated in the blue cell. Then select whether the material is refined or unrefined, virgin, recycled, or reused, and whether or not you would like the item footprint calculated. Calculating the item footprint means that the energy and air emissions associated with the off-site manufacture of materials will be included in your footprint analysis, rather than just the materials transport. If you'd only like to consider transport, select No in this column. If the material is recycled or reused, you will typically choose No for whether you want the item footprint calculated. The next columns are used to calculate the footprint associated with materials transport. It's easiest to start by selecting the mode of transportation, as this will determine which other columns need to be populated. The majority of the pre-populated drop-down options are in units of gallons per ton mile, or GPTM. This is typically easier to use than the miles per gallon options, as it does not require you to count each individual transportation trip to the site. Instead, you just need to know the one-way distance from the location of manufacture to the site. After selecting a mode of transportation, you can select a fuel type, which will automatically populate default fuel usage rates. You also have an option to enter your own fuel usage rate if preferred. You can then enter the one-way distance to the site if known. Alternatively, the default distance of 500 miles will be used instead. You can also select whether or not you'd like to include empty return trips in your calculations, although note this option is only applicable for modes of transportation that are in units of miles per gallon, not units of gallons per ton mile. Fuel efficiencies in gallons per ton mile are already assumed to include the empty return trip. After populating this information, a calculated amount of fuel used for transport will be populated in column R, which will ultimately be incorporated into the environmental footprint summary. If you have a material that travels by more than one method, for example, by train for part of the way and truck for the rest of the way, enter the material information in a separate row for each mode of transportation. When doing this, be careful to only calculate the item footprint on one row, as I did here. Otherwise, you risk double counting the emissions associated with offsite manufacture of the materials. Note that the fuel type for barge, train, and aircraft should be set to diesel.